impacted me, like the fact that there are just millions of vacant homes in the United States, but just so many people living on the streets. And growing up in Atlanta, it's something that you are around a lot, and you always see homeless people, and a lot of people try to avoid interacting with them. And I think that a lot of people really just take the fact that they have a home for granted. And that's what I really wanted to call attention to with this piece. What you see here is an oil painting that I did, that I tried to combine traditional pose with the not so traditional topic of homelessness and urban homelessness specifically. Um, I tried to use a lot of references and to make the settings to be very urban and with an obvious reference to alcoholism, which is one of the main factors, along with mental illness and disease, poverty, and just simple being down on your luck, that are the contributors to homelessness. So now that you know why I created this piece, I'm gonna now talk about some of my process that I went through when I was creating it. The first thing I did to create this piece was do a couple preliminary sketches. The first one I did was in charcoal, and I based the anatomy off of a photo of my younger brother who is an athlete, and I based the face loosely off of a picture of my dad, but I mostly just used my imagination for the beard and the hair. And then I went on to do a watercolor sketch where I was figuring out the background, and I kind of mashed up that background out of a couple different pictures that I found in my just random photo vault. The next thing I did was I stretched a 2.5 by 4 foot canvas that I built myself, and then I did a acrylic wash on it with that kind of blue gray color. I then used my preliminary sketches as a reference to sketch out my composition with a ballpoint pen. And then the first thing I did was work out the face and some of the body in order to figure out my color scheme, because I find it harder to um, come up with a color scheme based on the background for the body than it is to make a color scheme for the flesh tones and then use the flesh tones in the background. And once I had the flesh tones and all the colors worked out, I used those same colors to fill in the background and block in colors before I finished the rest of the body. After I finished blocking in all of the colors in the background, I finished out the rest of the body and then added the final details to get this finishing product. For our fourth and final project, our assigned concept was a slice of daily life and art for daily life. For my project, I chose to do another series of small still lives and focusing on food items that are consumed daily but are often overlooked. For example, you might eat a banana one day and forget about it, or drink a glass of water and never give thought to it again. Or you might let that banana sit there and rot, and it'll just die and go away, and no one will ever remember it. But by painting it, it'll last a lot longer than it would have in memory. And I think that is a very important part of painting, especially in still life painting, is just the fact that the objects you might paint are temporary, but the painting will, if cared for, it will last a very long time and be remembered, hopefully. And this series is not only a call to attention, to a call for attention to remember the things you do daily, but an appreciation for some of the things that you might take for granted and someone else might not have. Additionally, one of my largest influences in this series was the COVID-19 outbreak that we're currently going through. When I read the prompt for this concept, I thought that, well, there's not much going on in my daily life since I'm stuck at home and everyone I know is basically stuck at home with not much to do. One of the main things that there is to do around the house, though, is not only paint, but to cook and eat food. So I thought that this was a perfect opportunity to create a sort of record of the things that I ate, that so that they might not just pass into nothingness and be forgotten about. And it's also a testament to how some people are reacting to this pandemic and quarantine by just sitting around inside and making the best of it by cooking good food and drinking good drinks. And now I understand that you might not be able to see each painting clearly as they're all very small on this slide. So I'm going to go through each one individually and maybe say one or two words about each one. And then I'm going to describe my process of oil painting on torn paper with a short demo video. Here we have a vodka soda, which is also a part of my inspiration from the quarantine because since a lot of people are stuck at home, alcohol sales have been through the roof, and I think you'll notice that I've been painting quite a bit of alcohol. And also, please feel free to pause the video as I'm going to be going a little bit quick through these paintings so that you can get a better look at each one. Here's a white onion, clementine, and cream pitcher. This one's one of my favorites, a beer bottle, a banana, which I've been eating for breakfast every day, orange juice and a clementine, a sliced green pepper, my favorite pepper, a cracked egg, whiskey and an orange slice, a tribute to Andy Warhol, tomato and soup, honey jar, and last but not least, strawberry and water. And now, if you'll stay with me for just another minute or two, I'm going to be discussing my process for my oil paintings on torn paper. The first thing I do is to crease the edges and tear them off to create a nice texture for the paper on the watercolor paper. Then I add a coat of gesso to the front and the back. While it's drying, I arrange my composition. After doing a wash in burnt sienna, I then sketch out my composition onto the page and begin blocking in colors. I like to work on a wet surface, so I do not wait for the underpainting to dry before I begin painting. I usually work in sections, so I start by blocking a color for one section, and I immediately start adding highlights and detail. Also, you'll notice that I'm not really using a palette knife to mix any colors, because when I work on miniature or smaller paintings, I find that it's quicker for me to just mix with my brush. Also, you can see that I've taped off the edges with artist's tape to create a very clean and crisp line and a big white margin around the painting. For when I'm finished, I remove the tape to create that crisp line. Now I'm finished with my first section, which was the water, and I'm moving on to the strawberry, which is my second section. A lot of painters like to skip around and fill in different parts of the painting at different times, and even do the background first and create their subject using the mid-range tones of the background. But I prefer to do my subject first, especially when I'm painting clear objects, because it helps me define the edges better. And now you can see that when I put the black background in, the highlights of the water glass really pop out instantly, and you can tell that it's a see-through object. Lastly, I work on the background and the foreground, and I'm filling it in with a burnt sienna, which is one of my newer favorite colors to use. And after I finish the foreground here, I'll take those tape pieces off, and voila!